Universities normally receive results a few days before they are officially published, so that we can then, of course, put it within our system, make sure everything has been checked and matched.
I am with Dr. Matric G. Thank you for your time, and I think this interview comes at a very crucial time as students are actually preparing to go to the university. There are a lot of questions that they have, their parents and all that. But before I get into the questions that we got from our learners out there, maybe if you can just give us a brief background about who you are, where you come from, and your role within where you are currently working. So over to you and welcome.
Thank you, Teboho, and thank you for having me. As Teboho has said, I'm Dr. Matric. I currently am employed at the University of the Western Cape, where I am the Deputy Registrar for Academic Administration. Usually the Office of the Registrar deals with student enrollment. So that is everything from recruitment right through to registration, your examinations, graduations, the rules, your system set up within the university, as well as governance, which forms a very strong part of how a university functions. So essentially, the Registrar's Office sits as the compliance officer of the university, as well as the administrative head of the university for everything related to academic administration. So it is very core and central to a student's journey at the university. While they focus on the academics, the rest of it is administration, which we then try to govern so that they can get through the system and have a quality degree at the end of the day. So that very briefly, Teboho, in a nutshell,
thank you so much.
Is the Office of the Registrar.
No, thank you so much. I think short and sweet. And now moving into some of the questions that we get from the learners. I want to ask, the results were out last week, Thursday. I think Wednesday, the IEB were out. I want to find out now for a parent or a matriculant out there at home who has applied at the university, probably either got a feedback or didn't get a feedback. Does the university get the results directly from the Department of Education, or do they have to come to the university and submit the results?
So if you are studying the NSC, or you are studying IEB, or you are studying through Sakai, so that is, of course, the other examination body, the universities will receive results directly from the department through University South Africa. So we, of course, have an agreement with DBE and an agreement with University South Africa that we would get the results directly, and we would then use those results in order to make selection decisions once we receive them. Universities normally receive results a few days before they are officially published, so that we can then, of course, put it within our system, make sure everything has been checked and matched, and we can then, of course, start doing our selections so that when results are released, officially released on Friday, that is when learners can actually go to schools and get the results, we, of course, are then ready to make offers and decisions to them. So essentially, Teboho, we will get it directly. Applicants do not have to submit results to most universities unless the university tells them to submit it. But for most universities, currently we receive results directly, we upload them to our systems, and we then make decisions.
Okay, and you are speaking about most universities have them. Under what condition will a university have access to them? And what condition will prevent others from having access to the results? I'm just thinking, how will I know that where I have applied them got access to them or they don't? I mean, in case where I haven't received any communication yet.
So in those cases, Teboho, what would happen is when you apply, a university will let you know as to whether you need to submit results or not to them. In most cases, universities will go to receive the results directly from the department because it makes it easier. It's a lot more difficult to receive all hard copies, etc., verify, make sure that you have authentic results. You are not sitting with fraudulent documents. That takes a lot of time. So a lot of universities will go the route of getting it directly. But if a university does not have the systems that are set up for it, they will then, of course, ask a student, or rather an applicant, for those results. But they will always tell you at the time of application whether you need to submit your results to them or not. And the decisions that they make, they will also inform you that we don't have your results or we require your results. But as I've said, for majority of the universities in South Africa, we get the results directly, we use them directly. And if a university has not received your results directly, they will ask you to submit it.
Okay, super then. So now tell me, because students apply with their grade 11 results, and often they will either get a provisional acceptance or maybe rejection on the spot. I want to speak about two cases where a student reply, they have a provisional acceptance, and then, or a student reply, they don't get any feedback. Let's leave the one who have been rejected. They've been rejected. Or maybe I'll also touch on the rejection. Maybe let's start with the one who reply, get a provisional acceptance. Does it mean when you've got a provisional acceptance, you will immediately get a feedback now, whether you have now been fully accepted or not? That's number one. And number two, if you were rejected due to your grade 11 and your June results of 2012 of last year, and your grade 11 results, but you have outperformed them. In other words, now you have performed better than the grade 11 and the grade 12 June results, which you have applied with. Will it still be possible to now approach the university and say, I'm no longer that bad performer, now I perform better? Or are you now already out, you are not considered? And the last group will be those who have applied, but for some reason, they never got any feedback at all. So they don't know whether their form was actually been received by the university. I don't know if you remember the three questions, but you can just answer if you remember.
No, I got them, Teboho. So your very first question deals with provisional offers being made. Universities, not all universities, but there are a number of universities will make a provisional offer to you. And that may be based on your grade 11 results, final grade 11. It can also be based on your mid-year grade 12. So there are various ways in which universities make provisional offers. Others make no provisional offers, and they will only consider you based upon your final results. But I'll leave that one out for now. Where you do have the provisional offer, that provisional offer will be dependent on a number of things. The very first one will be that you maintain the current progress that you had, so your current academic performance, or you perform better. So that would always be the university's first condition for that provisional offer. The second condition, of course, will then be based on competition for space, as we call it. So it might be that you got a provisional offer, you'd performed quite well in your final matric results, but there were better performing applicants. And the university will then say, we are going to go with the better performing. So unfortunately, we're going to withdraw your provisional offer at this stage. So when it comes to provisional offers, it is, as it states, provisional and conditional. It will depend on whether you maintain or perform better in your final matric results. And it will also depend on how other applicants have performed. If they have performed a lot better, then unfortunately you might lose your conditional or your provisional offer. If, of course, you don't meet the academic performance, you perform a lot worse in your final matric results, or you don't perform as well as your grade 11 or your mid-year grade 12, then in that case, you might get an automatic rejection as well. So just because you have a provisional or conditional offer doesn't guarantee you a place when your final results come in, even if you perform just as well, because there might be other applicants who perform a lot better and who now will take up your space. Okay. Are you covered on the provisional offer side, Teboho?
So in other words, even though you've got a provisional offer and you perform well, it's still not a guarantee that you are actually going to be given admitted to the university. So it's more like you are on the waiting list of some sort, but you might not necessarily be admitted. It will still depend on the space that is available. Okay. Yeah, no. I think it's very much clear. And the last one, those who apply but no response. I think the question I have in particular there is it possible that you can apply and you never get a feedback from the university? You know, when you apply for employment and they don't tell you whether you are coming for interview or not, or whether you are shortlisted. Does it happen like that, where if you are really, you don't even come close to meeting the requirement, you are not going to waste time in even reply you and waste ink? Is that like that, or you reply to every person, even those who are rejected?
I'll come to that one in a second, Teboho. I think I'll first just touch on the middle one, which we left out.
Yeah.
And that was on those applicants who were declined when they applied provisionally.
Oh, yes.
And who now have performed better.
Yeah.
So within the university space, we don't decline you out completely for a program unless your subjects do not match up to what is your minimum requirements. So in every program that an applicant will apply for every choice that they apply for, there are minimum admission requirements, which basically means this is the absolute minimum for which we may consider you for this particular program. And in some of those cases, there are very specific matric subjects which an applicant must have. It might be that they must have pure maths and not maths lit, or they must be taking physical sciences. And if an applicant doesn't have those subjects, then they will, of course, automatically be declined, no matter how well they do in their final matric. If they don't have the required subjects, they will always be declined for that particular program. It's why we always remind applicants, make sure that when you are applying, always look at the program and what the requirements are. If you don't have the right subjects, choose something for which you do have the right subjects. So that's just a bit of an aside, Teboho, just for applicants to be aware of.
Thanks for that.
But when it comes to you improving your results, we will always reconsider your application. So for an example, within UWC, where I am from, once final matric results are obtained, we then review all applications to make sure that those that have improved, we have them on our system and we look at them and we don't unfairly decline them because they might have outperformed a lot of other applicants. So we always, as universities, we will reconsider your application if you perform better. You are not immediately declined out. Even if you do get a provisional decline or a conditional decline, it doesn't mean you are out of the system completely. If you improve, we will always reconsider you for possible selection. So I hope that covers that middle ground, Teboho.
No, definitely does. Yeah, continue. Sorry, you wanted to add something?
No, not a problem. I'm then just going to cover on the very last one, and that is of communication. So communication is perhaps one of the biggest Achilles heels of universities. We do try to communicate as much as possible. However, sometimes contact information is incorrect, or contact information has changed, or a parent or brother, sibling, etc. might have applied on an applicant's behalf, and communication is being sent to them and they are not relaying it to the applicant correctly, etc. And so it's always to make sure that when you have applied, your contact information is correct. And if you change it, to communicate with the university to let them know that my contact information has changed, communication could go to another space. But when it comes also to statuses, Teboho, so what is my application status? Universities have online systems where applicants can go and check what their status is at any point in time. And those are updated either immediately or very regularly. So if you do go onto an application portal and there is the option to view your status, that status will always be updated and you can then know your outcome right there. Universities do communicate with applicants who have been declined because we know that you want to know whether you've been accepted or not. And not knowing is perhaps the biggest part of stress that you can create on an applicant, just because they'll always be waiting. And we don't like to keep people waiting for no reason at all. So what universities normally do is that when we do selections, if you do not meet the minimum admissions criteria and you are declined immediately, then they will communicate that either on their status portal or they will send you an SMS or an email. But they will always let you know that you've been declined. There are instances, of course, where universities do not get through to all of their applications, or it's just that somebody has not pressed a button to decline the applicants and then they might not hear from us. But it's always important to know that if you have not heard from a university, is to just get in contact with them to find out what is your status or what is your application status at the end of the day. And if you have not heard by the time classes have started, then in most likelihood you have been declined and your communication might still be coming to you, or you might not have seen it because it was sent to another contact address that the university might have had. But in all instances, Teboho, universities will try as far as possible to communicate with applicants, whether they have been declined or whether they have been accepted, whether they have an offer that they have not accepted as yet as well. Universities will always communicate just to ease that anxiety and that tension, because it is quite a stressful period for applicants at this point.
No, true. So, and thank you for clarifying that. So in essence, if all be well in terms of your communication channels, you should be able to receive some form of communication from the institute. So basically, one can say the advice to any matriculant is that check all the communication channel that you have used. If it's your uncle's telephone, email, or whatever, go there and check it. Probably there's an email. If it's not in your inbox, check your spam. Maybe it's in your spam. Just check all over before you start to go to the university. But if you don't get anything at all, then maybe try to contact the university before it's too late as well, because you don't also want to go during the first week of attendance and they tell you we've been waiting for you, we never got feedback from you. So thank you for that. But now I want to get clarity for those, because you speak about portal, you speak about system, and I know for sure that learners who don't even understand what Greek is this portal or system. So these are learners whom, when they come to university, you still have to encourage them to touch the mouse and tell them you don't bite them, they must relax and press it, you know. So they have no clue what this portal is all about. They are going to hear that word for the first time when they enter the university entrance. Now, for those learners, and they probably applied according to them, but maybe they don't even know about the submit button. They think applying is just putting information. They don't know there at the bottom there's a submit, which they're not aware of. So I want to find out, if I believe I've applied, the university has not communicated to me, and I happen to go there wanting to find out about my status, what proof will you want for me, or what should I have as a proof that I have applied? What will I need to show? Because I assume there must be some form of proof for them to be able to investigate. What will I have? Let's say somebody been applied, but maybe on a post or whatever. What proof will I have that I can prove that I've applied, but I have not got any communication?
So there's two ways in which applicants apply. The first one is the very traditional one, and that is with a hard copy application. Most universities don't accept hard copy applications anymore. There are very few which do. And so for those that are submitting via hard copy, one, first make sure that the university actually accepts a hard copy application. You are not using an outdated form that you might have gotten from somebody, etc. But to make sure that one, the way in which you are applying is correct. So some universities will only use an online application, such as UWC, where it's only via an online application, or with other universities where it is only online. Now, when you are applying online, if you are not applying for yourself, it's very important to know who's applying for you on your behalf, and to check with them how they did it, what they have done, if they received any communication, etc. The reason I say this, Teboho, is that A lot of applicants believe that either a family member has applied for them or a teacher has applied for them, but they have no proof that any application was done. When you apply to a university, whether it is via hard copy or whether it is online, the university will always give you some sort of confirmation. If it is done online, you will get a confirmation letter via email, or you will be able to go onto your application and see that it has been completed and submitted. So when any applicant applies, they'll always receive some sort of a receipt of confirmation that you have applied. If you applied via hard copy, then a university might send you a letter, or if you handed it in at an office, they might give you some sort of a document to say we have received your application, and that you then keep as proof. If you applied online, you would usually get an SMS or you would get an email, and that would say, we have received your application, it is complete, or we have received your application, it is incomplete. We require the following documents from you for your application to be completed. Or you might get a reminder email to say that you have started your application, but we see you have not yet completed it. Please complete it before applications close. So if an applicant comes to us now at this time of the year and they say, I applied online and we can't find them on our system, we would always say, what proof do you have? Did you get an acceptance, not an acceptance letter, but rather an acknowledgement letter? Did you receive any confirmation? If not, then perhaps you didn't actually apply properly to the university. But most universities keep what we call an audit trail, where we monitor what an applicant does the moment they start their application. So even if you've started and you have not completed, a lot of us will still keep that information just for a while, usually for the year, just so that if there is a problem later on, we can go back to it. So you might have started, but you did not submit it. So we would then say, okay, you started it, but you never completed it. Perhaps there was an issue with connectivity. Perhaps you had a problem. Perhaps you just lost interest in applying to this particular university and you didn't want to continue with your application. So whenever an applicant applies to Teboho, there will always be some sort of confirmation that you have applied. Either we'll email you a letter, we'll send you an SMS, you'll get some sort of hard copy confirmation if you had it in a hard copy, but always make sure that you have some confirmation that you've applied and your application is complete. That is a very important part to note. You don't want to miss that. If you applied, make sure you have your confirmation. And if a university has not sent it to you, get in contact with their contact center, their admissions office, and ask them for that confirmation. Because at that point, you might find out, okay, maybe I didn't actually complete it. This is what I still need to do. Let me do it, and then let me get my confirmation.
Okay, no, awesome. I think that is very clear. And at what point should a learner or a student at Matric who just completed, and I'm talking about those in particular who have not got any form of communication, at what point should I take a step to come to the university? I know you mentioned the issue of calling, but sometimes when there's anxiety, or I remember during our time, you'll call the university, you are holding, they are playing this music until your airtime finish, you call again, they play the music until your airtime finish. When we encourage students to take a step and come to the university?
The very first one, before you take any steps to come to the University of Teboho, as you mentioned a bit earlier as well, when you reminded the listeners, was that make sure you first checked all of the communication channels that were submitted to you. If a university has an online portal, an online system where you can check your status, go on there and check what it is. If your status remains awaiting a decision, or it is still pending, or it is that a university is still considering you, then that is what the status is. And it would not be advisable at that point to go to university to find out, because they will give you the same feedback and you might have wasted a lot of time going to university because your status is already present over there. The only time we would advise people to really go to a university is if you have had absolutely no communication. And with that, I say be sure that you have applied correctly, your contact information is correct, and that you are absolutely certain that you've tried either calling the university, emailing them, and if they have not responded, or using what we call web chat, which is now available to most universities as well. But make sure you've applied correctly, your contact information was correct, you've checked all of your communication channels. But we often remind applicants, don't waste your resources coming to a university, especially if your application is still saying pending or waiting decision or still under consideration, because that means the university is still busy with your application. And as applicants accept offers as they register or don't register, universities will either make more offers or they will close it off. But as I mentioned before, universities will try to communicate a final decision as soon as possible. And it is then just for applicants to be a bit patient with universities, because it is a process that one must go through. You must make 10 offers, see how many accept and how many register before you make more, so that you eventually get to your registration number or your registration target. And it is this continuous process of universities making offers, seeing who accepts, who declines, making more offers if they need to, or declining students because now they've reached their numbers and they are completely filled. So Tebogo, going to a university, don't go there unnecessarily. One, universities have your results, so you don't need to bring it. Two, make sure that you have checked all of the relevant portals, relevant sites for your status. And three, make sure that you have actually applied correctly at the various universities or at the university you are trying to query your information from. So we advise applicants normally not to come to university if you don't really have an issue, because it just ends up creating queues, it ends up creating more queries, and you might get the same response that you already see online. You might come to university to say that my application is still pending, what is the outcome? And the university will give you that same information to say, we are still considering you, you need to be patient in that regard.
No, thank you for that. I think it's very much clear. Don't actually waste your money while you can save it for later. Usually the university will take effort to communicate and give you all the information. You can actually do a lot online. It's actually going to even be to advantage to start familiarizing yourself with an online system. What I've learned as well is that other institutes, they actually even afford you an assistant, a mentor. Others have an automated chatbot that can help you with that process even before you go to the university. So they must actually take advantage of those platforms. But maybe for us to also appreciate the work of the university, can you just share a bit of what actually happened from the time the university opened? I think the university opened around the 4th, the 5th, or around there, the 6th, the latest. What happens from that day until the day the results are released in terms of preparation of the first-time entering students, or maybe even all the students that come back to the university? What is that administrative process that maybe us as outsiders needs to be aware of, so that we can be able to know that universities are not just sitting, there's a lot happening in the background? Because I think the anxiety comes when my neighbor has got an email and I don't have an email. And the worst is my neighbor is accepted and I'm still on some condition. I'm still waiting. I'm wondering, why are they having this selective communication? Maybe just so that we can appreciate, share a bit of what's happening now at the university. Are they lecturing? Have they forgot about us? What's actually happening in the background?
So in terms of this period right now, January, preparations for January actually begin way before in the previous year, where universities are busy making sure that their systems are set up to receive results, their program rules are all correct so that they know exactly where the students are going to be qualifying or not. They've checked that they have all of the resources available for the following year, so that when we receive results, we of course can then start making offers and decisions quite soon. The university is open on the 3rd of Jan, always, either on the 2nd or the 3rd, so they will open up quite early. In the past, as opposed to this current year, universities used to receive results within that first week of January. And we would then immediately start processing those results. For the 2022 year, we received it only on the 15th of January this year. And so selection decisions began at that point. However, prior to that, universities will begin on the 3rd of January to go back, make sure that everything is in place, make sure that registration is all set up, make sure that the selections are all on hand, staff are aware of how to do selections, etc. Staff are within their offices, and there's a lot of preparation, Teboho, that goes into that final decision making. It is also to make sure that you've checked all of your registration numbers or your registration targets are correct. Because as you know, a university can only take in so many applicants. We might have a number of programs, and we then of course make sure as well, just to double check that all of those targets are matched up well. We make sure that whatever offers were made last year to past matrics or post matrics, how those have been accepted or not. And we begin a lot of basically strategy and preparation for the results to eventually come to us. Once the results come to us, we have quite a lot of work that must be done. Because remember, as much as we are working on a system and we automate a lot of things, each applicant is looked at as an applicant, as an individual. And so it must be that we go into it, we look at the results, we look at any other mitigating circumstances that might be attached to them. And we then, of course, make a decision of yes or no, or we place them on a wait list. And then, of course, we make sure our communications are ready and all of that is sent out. That's just the one aspect of universities, the selection part. Remember, at the exact same time, the university is also quite busy with the 2023 academic year, where you might have postgraduate students in professional programs that have already started from the 1st or 2nd week of January. And so that process is also running with registration, with getting students into lectures, etc. You also have those students who might be writing supplementary examinations or Senate discretionary assessments. And that also happens within this period. So throughout this month of January, university administration, university governance is very, very busy. It's not just selections that are happening. There's lots of other processes that accompany selections as well. But the main aspect, of course, is around selections, getting those done, making sure that applicants receive their statuses, they receive communication from us. The second aspect, of course, as you mentioned, Teboho, is that some applicants might feel my friend got a response from the university, I haven't received one as yet, or my neighbor got one, why have I not received it? Remember, you might not be applying for the same programs. Some programs that your neighbor, etc., might have done quite well and they want to make an offer, and so they will get communication quite fast. Or it might be that your neighbor is also not successful and they might have been declined. If you haven't received comms, it's most likely that you are still on a wait list, or your application status is still pending and the university is still looking at it based upon how the selection process unfolds in terms of students that applicants that accept, don't accept, etc. So don't always compare yourself with your neighbor or with your friend, because you might have applied for different programs. You have performed differently in Matric, and there might be very different circumstances. But to always be aware that if somebody has received a comms, it means the university is busy working and you will receive something in due course. It's not that you have been forgotten, but there is a process that universities must go through when making their offers, because you cannot just make offers to everybody who qualifies. You must go through a process of starting off from the top based upon whatever other criteria that you have, make those offers, see how many accept, whether you need to make more or not. And that process takes a while because you need to give people time to accept an offer. If I make one today, I can't tell you accept it immediately because I'm moving on to the next person. I will usually give you a few days to say, okay, make up your mind. After that has passed, I will then say, okay, only 50% accepted my offer. I'm going to make another 10 or 20 offers and those will go out. So it's always to remember that there's a lot that goes into selections, Teboho. Apart from all of the other processes that are running, selections is a cycle that must happen. You start off at the top and you go, as you move along, you make offers while you track how your acceptances are going, how your registrations are going, and you will hear from a university eventually.
No, super. Now. And actually, when you are talking, you made me remember one of the questions I received from people is, usually when you apply, you are using only one form to the university, but you find the form has got either 2 or 3 options. Now, and there are many talks around that to say, if you've got a first choice, does it mean you'll get advantage to have access into admission in the first choice, yes, into the second and third, or it doesn't matter? It's just to help administrators to know how to distribute your application, because there seems to be a perception that if an option is third in the field where you have applied and you are the second option, they'll only start with those with the first option before they consider the second option. Is that the correct process, or is it just an outsider perspective?
That's quite split, Teboho. You would find that universities within that space operate very differently. Okay. Most of the universities don't look at whether it is first choice or second choice. It's just us allowing you to apply for more than one program to improve your chances to get accepted. So for example, at UWC, if you are applying to UWC, you can apply for up to 2 choices. Whether it's first choice or second choice, it doesn't matter to us. We would just take you and put you in those particular programs so that you can be looked at for selections. If, for example, your first choice was Bachelor of Arts, your second choice was BCom, we wouldn't say that because your second choice was BCom, we're not going to consider you, and we will wait for all of those that said BCom was their first choice to be selected first. So in those cases, Teboho, it's always that universities operate slightly differently, but for most of the universities, there is no first choice and second choice. It's just choices that we offer you, and you are not disadvantaged just because a program is a second choice. I'm not sure if I'm covering your question, Teboho.
No, you did, because actually others will go to the extreme of saying, let me send 3 applications with all my 3 options as first choice to avoid this, whatever view that they have that other institutes are doing.
Just in that case, Teboho, remember, universities only accept 1 application per applicant. So even if you do that, the university will discard the other 2 applications because you can only submit 1 completed application. Also, if you are applying online applications usually only allow 1 applicant or 1 application per applicant. And of course, there's a number of choices attached to it. But to submit a number of applications to a university with different rankings won't help you in any way at all.
Okay. No, super then. You know, one thing that I've seen the most, particularly on the first generation to enter university, where there's nobody in the family who went to the university. When they get a letter, whether it's a provisional acceptance, a rejection, or acknowledgement, actually most time it's acknowledgement of receiving the application. It usually has a student number. I think in the past, I remember during our time, they'll call it a reference number until you are admitted, then it will be a student number. Now, my question is, because usually when people see the student number, they assume they're already a student, they're just waiting for the card. At what point does the university consider a learner their student? So that at least we clarify that, and then so that the parents even who are listening, what should be a proof to them that your child is a student? And at what point is the child still in application process? What should the parents take as a proof that the student is a student of university?
I'm going to start just from the top, Teboho, just to outline the application process, and then I'll come to the student part. So just to recap, remember when you apply, once you've made your application, any applicant or parent, guardian, sibling must then make sure that they get confirmation that the application has been received and that it is complete. That's their very first step. Make sure that is then out of the way. The next step is then to make sure that you then get a final offer from the university. Not a conditional offer, not a provisional offer, but a final offer from the university. Once you get that final offer, the university might either ask you to accept it or not, or they might say your next step is then to register. So once you receive that final offer, you accept it, you then move on to registration. That then ends the sort of application side of things. You are now moving closer to becoming a student. You're not a student as yet. Getting the final offer, accepting it, does not make you a student. You must then still formally register at the university. That registration process, of course, then means being cleared financially, so either through NSFAS, or you've paid the upfront payment, or you've paid the registration fee. And once you've registered, you will then get a letter or confirmation to say that you are now a registered student at the university. We no longer refer to you as an applicant. We now call you a student. And you only become a student at a university once you have registered and you then have your actual student card. So prior to completing your registration, you are never a student at the university. You might have a student number or a reference number or an application number. All of that means nothing up until you actually are registered at the university. Even before they get the card, if, for example, they're sitting in the Eastern Cape or they're sitting in the Northern Cape or even KZN and they're applying to the Western Cape or they're applying to Gauteng, they might do their registration online. And once their registration is completed, they will get a confirmation letter to say you have now been registered for a Bachelor of Arts, and these are the modules or the courses, or for the learners, the subjects that you will be doing in this year. So even before you get your student card, when your registration is completed and accepted, you will get a letter to confirm that congratulations, you are now a registered student at the university. And your next step, of course, would then be to get the card.
Okay, and maybe just to clarify, they must not confuse the congratulation letter of acceptance with the congratulation letter of admission, where you are now a student. That should be followed by having paid the registration fee.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, I want to then jump now, go to the issue of registration fee. Now, I see now varsities not only send acceptance, but they also send you the amount that is payable at registration. Now, my question is, you get a letter, they want 5,000, 6,000, whatever the amount is. And perhaps on your form, I'm not familiar with the application form, how they are, but perhaps you've indicated a financial need or maybe a need to apply for NSFAS. What happens then when you get the acceptance and you are given registration fee, but you don't have the money?
So there's a few different avenues that people can follow in that particular case, Teboho. One is if you have applied for NSFAS, then it is to wait for NSFAS to send your information to the university. So universities do communicate with NSFAS. NSFAS communicates with universities. And what we normally request from NSFAS is that they then send to us the list that they have where they have agreed to fund the student. If they have agreed to fund a student and they give us that information, we will then, of course, clear you to register, and you don't have to pay an upfront fee in order to register. You will be automatically cleared because NSFAS will be funding your studies. So that's the first one. If you are NSFAS funded, we will get the information from NSFAS hopefully a lot sooner than later, and we will then clear you to register. But that is only if you are funded by NSFAS. If you have, or if you have been funded by a bursary or a scholarship, Usually you then need to submit that information to the university. And typically it is within the financial aid office that you need to submit it to. They will verify the information and you will then be cleared for registration if that bursary or scholarship is valid and if they say they will be covering your tuition fees. The next one, of course, is where you have the money to pay, you pay it upfront, you get cleared and you are fine and you continue. The last one, of course, is where you don't have a response from NSFAS, you don't have a bursary or a scholarship, and you don't have the funds either in order to clear yourself. Now, in those cases, universities don't leave you out completely. What we then do have is a financial aid office or even a financial office that might then enter into some sort of an agreement or arrangement with you. So they will allow you to come in either online or in person. They would discuss what your financial situation is, and based upon that, they will make some sort of an agreement with you and you will then be cleared to register. So those are the basic avenues. So even if you do not have money, it's always to make contact with the university and find out, can I make an arrangement with the university to register? And most universities have these arrangements in place where you come in, you might have to submit documents, example, your pay slips for the last 3 months, or you might have to submit something else. They will, of course, vet it. And if they see, of course, that there is a need that you really cannot afford the fees, they will make some sort of an arrangement with you. But always, universities, there is a backup plan for you. So don't feel that you are completely out just because you do not have the funds. Universities also have their own bursaries and their own scholarships. And if you are truly a deserving applicant and student, they will also offer some of those to you as well. So what I'm trying to get at, Tebogo, is that if you do not have the funds, don't give up immediately. Even if NSFAS has not funded you, if you don't have a bursary or a scholarship at that exact moment, don't give up immediately. Go to the university, contact the university, find out, is there an arrangement I can make? Are there bursaries, merit awards, scholarships that the university has that I might be able to apply for and I might get cleared with? But don't ever just give up.
So don't just sit at home and cry and, think you are doomed to fail and not go to university. You must just make a step and communicate with the university. And maybe on that note then, let me get into the financial aspect because we've touched on it already. Maybe if you can just share a bit for the parents out there, what are the requirements for NSFAS? Because I know they've got specific requirements. If you can just break down in simple terms. And I think one of the questions I get a lot is that, will NSFAS cover a postgraduate student? Is it still open? How can they apply? Will NSFAS speak to them directly or they speak to them through the university? I think just to clarify that part.
So in terms of the application, firstly, for NSFAS, Tebogo, applicants must apply directly to NSFAS. You don't apply to a university any longer. The process for NSFAS is that you must apply via NSFAS. They have an online portal via which applicants apply, and that is done directly through NSFAS. NSFAS will then communicate to universities as well as to applicants once their funding has been finalized or an agreement has been reached, if they are willing to fund you or not. If you are applying to NSFAS, there are a few criteria that NSFAS uses. If you are a first-time entering student to university, the criteria is a bit simpler in terms of the overall one, but NSFAS does its own checks and has some additional criteria that they add on. But generally, it is open to all South Africans looking to study at a university. So if you are a South African citizen, you can, of course, apply to NSFAS. It doesn't mean you are guaranteed funding, but you can apply. If you are a SASSA recipient as well, you can apply. That puts you in another category, of course. And the overriding principle that NSFAS uses, especially when it comes to funding, and they have this on their website as well, is your combined family income must not exceed 350,000 Rand. This is the current level at which they use. And if you have a disability, your combined family income must not exceed 600,000 Rand. So those are the two general criteria that NSFAS uses. 350,000 Rand combined family income, 600,000 Rand if you have a disability. But there are other criteria, of course, that they do check. And when they speak about combined family income, they, of course, do their own checks in terms of where are you employed, etc. If you are a SASSA recipient, is it correct? Can they find you on the SASSA database, etc. But if you are not a South African citizen, unfortunately, you won't be funded by NSFAS directly. So when I say it's open to South Africans, I mean, if you are a South African citizen, you are more than welcome to apply. Whether you get funding or not will depend on the criteria. But the main criteria is that your combined family income must not exceed 350,000 Rand. That is usually the general criteria that NSFAS uses right now, and that is for new students. For returning students, or students who are funded in their first year study, they go into their second, or they were funded in their first 2 years, they go into their third. And NSFAS has different rules around that. And that, of course, they must check on the NSFAS website because those change. And they must familiarize themselves with that as well.
Okay, super then. So thank you for that. And now let's get into the from the admission now onwards. You have been admitted. At what point will you say a student now needs to come to the university? I know you can pay the registration online and register, but at what point then do you come? And I'm talking about when now the issue of residence come in. Maybe you did indicate on the form you want res. When do those things now start to be arranged? And if I get acceptance today, does it mean I need to pack my bags, come? Or the letter will indicate a specific day I must come? How does it work?
So when you get accepted, Teboho, what would happen is that you would then receive either immediately a letter for residence, whether you've been accepted or not, or it might come a few days later based upon how universities operate or how they work. If you receive an acceptance, that acceptance letter will then tell you what the dates are, if they want you to come to campus to register, or if you can do it online. When must you come and get your student card? When the academic year starts, so when is your first day of lecture? When orientation is taking place? When the Vice Chancellor's welcome or Rector's welcome is there? So it's always very important that when you do get your acceptance letter, you accept it. You then get all of the other information, which is also available on university websites, so that you know what dates you need to be at university. It's never, ever a good idea to just pitch up at a university. We always tell applicants, don't pack your bags and come to a university, ever, unless you got a letter or you got communication to say, come.
Okay.
Especially for residences. If you receive a residence offer, the residence letter will tell you when you can come to residence, because residences open at a particular time, because that is when they are now ready to accept students. If you don't receive a residence offer, we also advise applicants don't come to the university because you won't be able to find space for you. Because if you have not been given a space at residence, it means the residence is actually quite full. And it means you might not find accommodation, you could be very far from home, etc. And that creates additional problems for yourself as well as for others. So it's always to make sure that as excited as you are when you get your acceptance letter or you get a residence acceptance letter, read all of the information that is attached to that letter or attached to the email, because that will explain to you exactly when do you need to come, what you need to bring to the university, etc. Always make sure you read your communications thoroughly. A lot of our applicants get very excited with the first sentence of a letter which says, congratulations, you've been accepted or you have a space in residence. And they forget to read the rest of it, which says, only come to the university on the 4th of February, and then you are there on the 21st of January, and nobody knows what to do with you.
Yeah, I don't know. Totally, that's true. I mean, yeah, I mean, it can put you in a very awkward situation. But then, the question that one might have was, if the letter indicate that come on this particular day to register, and I'm asking on behalf of those who might be in another city or another province, does it mean that day I should come to register is also the day of I'll get the rest? Can I come with the bags on that day? And does it mean by the time I finish registering, I'll have a key? Or is it possible that the registration and residence can be 2 different days? So I might need to travel to a city to register, come back home, go to sort the rest the other day. Is those the possibilities, or are they always aligned by the university so that everything is done on the same day?
It's not always aligned, Teboho. Our advice is always that if you've been asked to come to register on a particular day, unless you've been told that residence is open and you have a space, you will only be coming on that day to register and you would have to leave thereafter. However, with the changes at universities where you can do things online, etc., if you are from out of province or you are from out of town, out of city, whatever the case is, our advice is then, rather than coming to the university to register, check with the university if you can't register online, because it saves you transport costs, it saves you accommodation costs of having to come for the day because you might have to spend the night, etc. And it just alleviates some of that tension and anxiety that you might have. Because to be honest, Teboho, residence placement is not always directly aligned to an offer being made or to registration. A residence might only open a week later, sometimes even 2 weeks later. And so our advice is that just make sure you've read the communication, you know exactly when residence is opening, if you have been offered a space. If your registration is happening a lot earlier, maybe check if you can't do it online. A lot of universities are more flexible now that we've moved to remote working, etc. Our experiences with COVID-19. And so we are a lot more flexible in those instances. But registering does not mean you can move into residence at that exact same point in time or on that day. It might be that residences are only opening a week later.
Okay. No. Awesome. Thank you for that. And now let's move to the part of registration. You have been accepted. You are called to register. There's something that causes a lot of frustration now to students. Choosing your modules. And you find, and I'm just asking this as a generic question because it might differ from institute to institute. Others, they might choose already some compulsory modules that you cannot not choose. You have to do them, but give you an option to add some electives. I'm just using this term loosely, but I would like you to break them down. For somebody, you have to register, and part of the registration require the choosing of modules. Can we just break it down, this concept that they're going to hear most often for the first time? We speak about elective module, core module, fundamental, compulsory. Some of these words are conflated. Some of them are same, they've got same meaning. Some of them, they're just jargons of higher education that the first year might not be familiar with. Can you just break it down before they even choose to understand what are these concepts and what do they mean and what are the implications?
Not a problem. So when an applicant applies, they would apply for a particular program. And that program would then happen over a number of years. So in some cases, it might be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever the case is. Each year, an applicant, or rather a student, must then do a certain number of modules or subjects as they would be aware of it from school. So they must do those modules, those courses, they must do those subjects at year level 1, year level 2, year level 3. Each year level has a specific number of modules or subjects that must be taken. It also has a breakdown of what courses or modules you have to take, you have no choice about it, and which ones you can choose between. So as an example, Teboho, because the students are more familiar with the school system. If you are looking at your matric, you have compulsory subjects in matric that you must take if you want to get an NSC certificate. And those, of course, are your 2 languages, maths or maths lit, and your life orientation. You must have those. Students don't really have a choice. You must have 2 languages. You must have maths or maths lit. You must have life orientation. If you don't have those subjects, you won't get your NSC certificate at the end of the year, no matter what else you do. They then have the choice, of course, to choose from a number of other subjects. They can do physical sciences, they can do tourism, they can do computer science, technical sciences, life sciences. They then have this whole range of other subjects which they can choose from. To understand it then within the university concept is within your first year, you would have those modules on those subjects which you must do. And those then become your compulsory or your core modules because you have to do them. There's no choice. If you want to pass from one year to the next, then you must do those modules and you must pass them. The rest of it is then stuff that you can take up throughout the year. So those, what we are then called your electives. So you might want to say, I want to do Afrikaans, I might want to do English, I might want to do tourism, I might want to do political science as elective modules. And there's a list of this that the university has. So I'm going to take just a step back, Teboho. So when you are registering for your first year, you would find that next to that registration, there's going to be this concept of what we call credits. So each module, each course that you want to take will have a specific number of credits, 10 credits, 15 credits, 20 credits, whatever the case is. And in your first year, each program will tell you, you must take 120 credits or you must take 140 credits in total, or whatever the case might be. But you must take subjects that will give you enough credits for that year. Am I making sense, Teboho?
You're making a total sense.
All right.
And maybe in your, to add in that line of thinking, because I know where you might be going as well. And especially when you have to choose your own elective, is it possible that one can have an elective that does not form part of their requirement for a degree, and will it be used? And I'm asking in a sense that a degree will require certain credits. Maybe as you go on, also touch on that, because okay. Some student will ask that I've got a wrong module, I need the right one to make up my degree. You know, yeah, maybe just touch on that as well.
Okay, so you then know that you must take a certain number of subjects to make up your total credits for that year. If, for example, let's just say your first year, they say you must have 120 credits. When you are registered, you must make sure that you then take enough subjects, enough courses, so that each one's credits equal up to 120 eventually. Now, within that 120, each program for that year might tell you, you must have these core modules or these compulsory modules. Let's just say you are doing a Bachelor of Arts degree, you are majoring in English. They will tell you that you must take English 1, you must take Standards to English 1, and you must take Principles to English 1. Those are your core modules, which is compulsory, and they equal to 60 credits because each one carries 20 credits. You then have another 60 credits that you must now take up for your electives. So from that 120 credits, you already have all of your core modules, that's 60 credits, and you now have another 60 credits which you must take up your electives. As a student, you will then be given a list of what electives you can take. And normally you would choose your electives based upon whether they are linked to your core modules, and that is what you want to specialize in. Or you might say, I want to actually broaden my horizons. So I want to take electives that are not necessarily linked to my core, but the university still allows me to take. So when you are registering for your electives, you cannot just take any elective at the university. The university will always tell you this is the list and you must choose from that list. If you go out and choose your own electives, it might be that at the end of your degree or at the end of that year, a faculty or department might tell you you cannot pass because we don't recognize this elective, or it's not part of the program and we are not going to accept it. So when you are registering, especially if you are a first-time student, if you don't understand what courses to take, etc., contact your university, contact your faculty. They all have their contact details specifically for this. It's what we call curriculum advising or curriculum advice, where we explain to you what it is that your program is about, what it is that your first year is about, what modules you must take, what are your electives, and from that elective list to then take whatever electives you like, but ones that the faculty and the department approves of, not just anything else. So when you are looking at your first year, you will get this concept of credits. Make sure that your modules equal up to that number of credits. It doesn't fall below. Make sure that if the program rules say you must take these 3 or these 4 subjects, make sure you've taken those 3 or 4. And that your electives are taken from the approved list of electives. And you don't just take any elective offered at the university. But most university registrations run on a system and they would limit you in terms of what you can and cannot take. But always as a student, just to make absolutely sure, because mistakes can happen, go back to the rules of the program. All of these rules are available on university websites. In some cases, it gets sent to you as well. And just make sure that what you've registered for is correct. You have your total number of credits for your first year, you have your correct compulsory and core modules, and you then have your electives, which are part of the approved electives, and you of course can decide which ones you want, either to broaden your horizons, make sure you understand different things, because your electives can also then push you to take other subjects in second year as well. So it's also to map out when you take in your electives, etc., what you might want to do in your second year, your third year as well.
Super. And maybe in relation to that, there's this issue about exclusion, and I'm sure part of your early January and February that you deal with a lot is the issue of students who have been excluded. But I want to deal particularly with those who might be facing exclusion due to failure, but also related with having went beyond or reached the maximum. And I wanted to break it down. There's this thing about the maximum duration of a course. And I also knew this later at the university. I thought when you get registered, you are a student forever until you complete, or unless anything happened before then. But I got to later realize that actually every course has got a maximum duration, and it might come to a point where you are writing requests for approval to extend things like that, or you might be excluded. But I wanted to break it down on a general perspective. How is the course structured in relation to the maximum and minimum duration?
Okay, so in terms of your program, you would always have a minimum period of study. So that, of course, will be linked to you passing every year and passing well. So, for example, within your BCom degree or your BA degree, etc., your minimum period of study would be 3 years. And that would be getting into year 1 passing, getting into year 2 passing, getting into year 3, and then, of course, passing and completing, and that would be your minimum. And not all universities have a maximum year of study for undergraduate programs. And the reason for that is there are very specific conditions from year to year. So for example, you're coming in as a first-time student to the university. You're going to be doing your first year at the university. Some programs have very specific rules where it says you must pass this particular module, otherwise you will fail and be excluded. Others might say you will fail, but you can still continue the following year. So there's just that when you are looking at your university, always understand what the rule is in terms of getting to the next year or being allowed to continue at the university. But in the general sense, Teboho, what would happen is that if you have a 3-year degree, normally a university would say that we allow you to fail your first year maybe once, we allow you to fail your second year maybe your second year maybe once, we allow you to fail your third year maybe once or twice, but after that, if you are still failing, we are going to exclude you from the university. Or it might be that by your second year of study, by the end of your second year of study, we want you to have passed all first year courses or modules. Otherwise, we will exclude you. So every university and every program has very different rules, and an applicant and a student must make sure they understand those rules, because the rules for one program which your friend might be in might be very different to what you are in, and so you cannot rely on that. Or what your brother or sister might have been doing might be very different to what you are doing, because rules also change as the years go by. So just because your cousin who was studying before failed twice and was still allowed to continue doesn't mean that same rule might apply to you. It might be that rules have changed at a university and you might actually be excluded. The exclusion, of course, Teboho, is a last resort that the university uses. And this is where they see that a student is actually not performing academically and they haven't performed over an extended period of time. Because failing a year doesn't mean automatic exclusion. It's usually linked to multiple failures or bad academic performance where you might be excluded completely from the university. But it's always important, make sure you understand the rule, because academic exclusion is quite complex and it's very different for different programs. But if you are not performing well consistently, then you will be excluded from a university. But of course, an exclusion doesn't mean you are out completely. It doesn't mean you can never come back to the university. It doesn't mean you can never go to another university. It just means that for this particular program, for this particular year, the university's decision is that they are going to exclude you. If you do get an exclusion, or if you are academically excluded at the end of the year, all universities have an appeals process where you can appeal to the university to consider allowing you back in the following year or for the year, and for you to continue with your studies. And that, of course, would be based upon what happened during the course of your studies. Perhaps there were particular family circumstances that were involved. There might have been mental health issues that were involved. There could have been anxiety because you might have lost funding, etc. So it's always what your appeal would then be about. But linked to that appeal, what a university will always want to see is, if you were struggling based upon these conditions, is there now a support structure in place to get you through? Because if there isn't a support structure, if you're still sitting with those same circumstances, nothing is going to change. So allowing you to just come back is not going to change anything. So if, for example, you have had mental health challenges, the university will then want to know, have you been seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist? Have you been obtaining proper counseling, etc.? Is there a plan for the next year with a counselor, with the university, to give you the support that you need so that you can address the mental health issues and therefore address your academic issues at the exact same time? So when you are appealing an exclusion, one, always be very clear about what may have led to you being excluded, but also what is now going to be in place to support you to actually complete. Because remember, if you've been at a university for a while, you've taken up the space of somebody else. You've taken up their space in the classroom, you've taken up their space at residence possibly, you've used funding. And so the university, as well as any bursar or funder, will want to know that you have support structures in place. And it's also very important, Teboho, for applicants who are on NSFAS, applicants who are on bursaries and scholarships to know that there are rules that come with those bursaries, those scholarships with NSFAS as well. That you cannot remain a student, as you said before, forever or for as long as you think you're going to take to complete the degree. NSFAS might say we will only fund you for a 3-year degree, we might only fund you for 4 years, and then funding is cut off, and that can be very detrimental to a student. So it's for students to always focus on their academics so that they don't land up in a situation like that. But to remember, apart from the university excluding you, you might also lose a scholarship, a bursary, you might lose NSFAS funding. And you need to bear that in mind, because if a university allows you to come back and the funder doesn't continue funding you, you are going to sit with a situation where you don't have funds for the year, you cannot pay for residence, you do not have allowances, etc. And students just need to be very aware of that, Teboho. Appealing an academic exclusion, you then need to know that you're going to have the support to continue. It's not just about continuing at university, but do you have the support to continue so that you can actually be successful and that you can actually complete your degree? I'm not sure if I covered all of your points on that one, Teboho.
No, you did. I think maybe just a quick follow-up on that. Let's say for the person appeals and the appeal is not successful, maybe due to some of the factors that you are mentioning. Does a unsuccessful appeal imply I've been banned from the university? I can't come a year or two later, or can I still come back to the specific university where I've been excluded? What does it mean in simple language? Because some might take it very negative that this university has really rejected me. They might not even want to see me because I've tried to appeal, still they told me we don't want to.
Remember, Teboho, if you appeal an exclusion and your outcome is a negative one, or it's been declined by the university, it doesn't mean that you cannot appeal in the future again. Because what you might find is that, let's just say I was studying at UWC in 2015. I got academically excluded at the end of that year. I appealed the decision, it came back negative, and they said, unfortunately, Ahmed, we cannot accept your appeal, and we will be upholding your exclusion, and you will need to leave the university as such. Now, within 2016, it doesn't mean I must sit hopeless now and do absolutely nothing. Within that space, you can go out, you can work, you can do your community engagement, etc. You might even take up other short courses, which you will then use as a base for your next appeal. Because come 2017, I might want to tell the university, you excluded me at the end of 2015, but this is what I have now done in 2016 to show you that I can be a success and that I can complete my qualification. So it's never ever that you are completely cut off, Teboho. A university might say, we're going to exclude you and we're not going to accept your appeal because you need to go back and really think about what you want to do in some cases, or you need to go back and actually deal with some of the issues, personal or otherwise, that is preventing you from being a success. And you cannot deal with those while still trying to study. So when a university excludes you, it's not because they just want to get rid of you or they just don't want to take you back. Because remember, your exclusion sits within a committee, and on that committee, it's made up of academic staff, it's made up of support staff, it's made up of student representatives, and they then look at your application to see, can you actually succeed in this year or not? And that's why I say it's very important that if you feel you're going to be a success, that support structure is there. But even if you are declined, it's not the end of the road completely. Go out, do stuff. show the university that you can actually succeed, or show them that, you know what, I had this huge personal issue in my life that was going on for 4 or 5 years, but I took this time in the last year or the last 2 years or even 3 years to actually deal with the issue. I am now at a position in my life where I feel I can come back into studies and I can actually be successful. But
Awesome.
also with that, Tebogo, just for students to also remember that programs change with time. So sometimes if you are allowed back after a number of years, it might be that you have to do or repeat some modules, or you might have to go back a year, etc. And that isn't always the end of the world, but they just need to bear that in mind. Because programs change with time, courses change with time. If you are coming back far too later on, or even if you just left your studies and you're coming back years later, just remember you might have to repeat some stuff, you might have to go back a year, etc. You don't always start off from where you ended.
Okay, no, awesome. Thank you for that. I think it clarifies the matter. Now, on the issue of registration as well, I want to understand if somebody has been registered, and I'm talking about now an F10, you have applied at UWC, UKZN, UCT, and for some reason, UCT delayed the responding to you, but UWC accept you. You pay registration, you occupy a res. While you are settling in, UCT gets back to you about your your first choice as well, and they were your first preference. Does the student have an option to go back to the admin and say, please give me my money because I'm gonna need it to register that site, and I want to hand back the key for the rest without being penalized as well, because you need that registration somewhere? Or what's the option? Do I just pack my bags and leave secretly, nobody sees me, and go register? How does it work?
Remember, Tebogo, if you have already registered and you want to leave the university, or you want to stop studying, you want to go somewhere else, whatever the case is, you must always formally deregister from the university.
Okay.
There's a few reasons for that. The first one is that when you formally deregister, depending on the university's calendar and depending on the university's rules, there are specific rebates or refunds that might happen. So if, for example, you registered in January, you want to deregister in February, the university might say, okay, because you're registering so soon, we will give you back 90% of whatever you paid to us, or 100% or 80%, whatever the case is. If you don't deregister formally, what would happen is that the university will bill you for residence, they'll bill you for the modules, and that will then become your debt because you never informed the university that you had deregistered. And so come June, come the end of the year, you might get a bill from UWC or from UCT to say that you registered with us, you were registered for these modules, you were in residence, here's 100,000 Rand that you need to pay, or 50,000 Rand. And then you say, but I didn't study at your university. And then the question would be, did you formally tell the university that you were leaving? And if you didn't tell the university, they might hold you liable for those fees. So never ever just pack your bags and disappear from a university if you have registered. Always deregister first. Okay. When it comes to changing universities, so if, for example, you registered at UWC and a few days later or a month later, UKZN, UCT, whoever made an offer to you, and you now want to move there, your first step must be to deregister from UWC. And then, of course, you will note that in UWC's communication, or in any university's communication, they will tell you what is refundable and what is not. They might tell you that your registration fee is non-refundable, but your upfront payment, which is a lot more, might be refundable. Or they might say that everything is refundable. Or in some cases, they might say nothing is refundable. And then you need to make the decision as to whether you're willing to lose the money or not to go and study somewhere else. The other one where the reason why you must deregister as well is because if you are a NSFAS student, NSFAS will continue paying the money to UWC. And unless you formally deregister from UWC and you register for you at UCT, they won't know that the universities have changed. And so they will bill you at UWC and they will pay UWC. But when you then at UCT, they will say, you never ever told us you were at UCT. And that might create problems for you. And that would be the same for a scholarship or a bursary, etc. So if you do want to change universities, always remember, deregister first and then check what is the refund policy of the university. In some cases, it's 100%. In some cases, it's not. But always check what is your refund policy. Don't ever just leave a university if you have already registered, because you might incur debt, you might incur other issues if you are funded by a bursar, by NSFAS, by a scholarship, whatever the case is. So that would just be my advice to Boho. Also note that if you cannot register at 2 universities at the same time, unless you have permission from both universities. So in those instances, UCT might not know that you are registered at UWC, but if they find out, they might ask you to deregister, or they might exclude you in that sense.
Thank you. So in short, you mustn't leave a university as if you are living an abusive relationship. You must
Yes.
make it official.
Always.
You must make it official because there are policies that govern that process.
Yeah. You must never ghost the university, Teboho.
Yeah, no, that is loud and clear. Maybe just touch briefly on the issue of registering with 2 institutes. I've got a question relating to that as well, but I think let's start with the one that we touched on now. I'm doing one module, but I want to now do another degree somewhere. What's the process of making both institutes aware, particularly in an instance where I am, I've already been registered? Am I obliged to tell them, or am only obliged to tell the ones I want to go to? Is there a process? Do they need to communicate between the two?
The universities don't normally communicate between the two, Teboho, but the student must get the information and pass it on. So if, for example, you've registered at UWC for a BA degree, and you now want to take up another module at UNISA, or you want to take another module at University of Stellenbosch, you must first ask UWC if they will allow you to do that. Once you've asked UWC, you must then ask UNISA if they will allow you to do that, or ask University of Stellenbosch if they would allow you to do that. And they, of course, will ask you for your letter of permission from UWC, and UWC will ask for a letter of permission from them as well. So it is allowed under very rare circumstances, because it might be that you are studying, let's just say you left the university for a while and you came back. It might be that the module that you need to do is no longer being done at a particular university, but UNISA is offering it. So in that case, the university might say, you know what, we'll allow you to register with us to complete these modules. We are not offering this module, but we'll allow you to register at UNISA and do it. And then, of course, UNISA must say, we will also accept you to do this module with us. So whenever you want to look at registering at 2 universities, the first one is you need to get permission from both, and you need to share that permission with both universities. And the second one, of course, is that if you want to do 2 degrees at 2 different universities, that's very seldom allowed because the workload is quite intense and strong. But under very rare circumstances, it might be allowed, but you must get permission for that. But that is not a route we would advise anyone to go through, because transitioning from high school to university is a huge transition on its own. Coupled with the workload of a program, you cannot literally juggle 2 programs at the same time. It's quite complicated, it's quite difficult.
So in simple terms, if I believe I'm a genius, And I know the university have a tendency of not believing in students who think they can carry more. Why should I tell them if I want to keep it as a personal matter?
Because we would find out.
In other words, what sin have I committed if I don't tell any institute?
Remember, Teboho, our subsidy at the university, at the various universities, our enrollment plans, which are linked to the Department of Higher Education and Training as well, is linked to registration numbers. It's linked to taking in a certain number of students. It's also linked to what your subsidy would be at the end of the day. And if you just register at 2 universities without permission, you are then interfering with those particular plans and you are causing problems with those plans. But in addition to that, because we report on our registrations, we report on our enrollments, we would find out from each other that a student is registered at 2 universities. And in that case, we then might say we're going to exclude you from the university because you broke the rules of the university and you put yourself in jeopardy and at risk of being kicked out of the university just because you were not willing to follow the rules. I think what we must also remember is that it is not that a university doesn't want to support students who want to carry more than what they have. It's about being also realistic from our own point of view in terms of what we know about student success, about what we know about student discipline, etc., and what we feel would be best for a student at the end of the day. And that, of course, is based upon experience. It's based upon data. And when we say it might be too much for you, it could be that we are correct. You might be right in that you can do 2 degrees, but a genius will always know what their own sort of limitations are, and they will also know that it is not worthwhile to risk everything just because you want to do 2 degrees, etc. You must also know that scholarships, bursaries, NSFAS, etc. only funds you for 1 degree. It does not fund you for 2 degrees. And so you might have to carry costs for other things as well. And also, in addition to doing 2 degrees, we are shifting back now to more contact classes. Once again, from COVID, we are shifting to in-person lectures. It might not be possible for you to then attend lectures. It might not be possible for you to attend labs, to attend clinical work, etc. if you are going to register like this at 2 universities. There might be issues with timetables, there might be issues with examination timetables, etc. And that is what students also need to bear in mind, is that a university is not going to change the entire examination schedule to accommodate one student who might have a clash somewhere else. They cannot change the entire lecturing schedule because it does not align with what you are doing on the other side. So there are all of those issues that students need to bear in mind, that is not just about registering at 2 universities, studying 2 programs. There are issues around your examinations, there are issues around your lectures, your lab work, your clinics, etc. And there could be serious clashes that happen in terms of scheduling that might not be able to be resolved at all.
Okay, no, awesome. I think it's very clear. And maybe related to that, the last question I think related to that, it's about a student who does final year and he ends up failing or having to repeat 1 module due to maybe financial constraint. The student decide, you know what, it's better I do this module through correspondence, maybe with UNISA, and then deregister from a contact institute to register that 1 module to 1 institute. But obviously, that 1 module will lead to graduation. Is it possible, or is still allowed, that a student can, when they're left with 1 module, go somewhere and graduate there? What's the implication in terms of graduation and reporting and all that?
So the first one, Teboho, is that if they've done all of their modules at 1 university, so let's just say they did all of their modules at Wits University, they now have just this 1 module outstanding and they want to do it somewhere else, they cannot graduate at that other university because the rules for credit transfer is quite particular that you can only take 50% or a maximum of 50% of your credits across to another institution. So there's no way you can take more than 50% over to UNISA. And if it's just one module you're doing at UNISA, there's no way UNISA is going to take all of your other 90%. They'll say we can only take 50% and you'll have to do the other 50% with us if you want to graduate with us. If you do have this one module outstanding and you cannot do it at the university because of whatever issues you might have to work, whatever the case is, you can ask for permission to then do it at UNISA or at another institution while still graduating at your original institution. So if you were at WITS, you can ask WITS, can I do this module at UNISA? If WITS says yes, you can do it there. They will then transfer the mark back to WITS, as we do with all of our transfers, and you would then complete with a WITS degree. But you can only do that if you've been given permission to do so. Never ever do it on your own account saying, I thought I could do it. You must get written permission from a university to say that we will allow you to do this module at another place, or we would allow you to do an equivalent module elsewhere and we will transfer it across. You must get permission. In some cases as well, we spoke about compulsory modules or core modules. A university might say this is a core module and we do not allow core modules to be done elsewhere. We will allow an elective perhaps, but we will not allow a core module or a compulsory module to be done elsewhere in order to graduate with us. So those are just things that students must bear in mind. You must always get permission if you want to act in that particular way. And there might be limitations where a university will say we are not allowing it because of X, Y, and Z. So just to bear that in mind, it is a possibility, but it's not a guarantee that you are allowed to do it.
Awesome, awesome. I think the good thing is that you can still be able to get, because I assume when you finish then in another institute, you'll bring that proof of results to your first institute and they can then graduate you. Now, let me ask, and I think we spoke about this previously when we met. This is a sneaky question that I get a lot from first years. A person applies for maybe, let's say, engineering, and they perform dismally, very bad at their first years. But then they decide, I was only doing engineering because my parents wanted it. I actually like medicine. Can they then ignore the first year performance and just use their matric to apply into medicine first year? And what is the policy regarding not being open to the first that you are doing matric? And I'm applying, wanting the university to assume that I took a gap year. I want to keep it between myself and my first year institute that I was not actually on a gap year. What's the policy regarding that? Can I just apply with my first year? I don't tell anybody that I failed a first year course somewhere. I pretend I'm just coming from matric with these nice results and there's nothing in between.
So what you would find, Teboho, is whenever you're applying to a university, they will always ask you that question, especially if you are not a current matric client for the next year as such. So if we see that you've completed matric in 2020 and you're now applying for admission for 2023, there will always be that question, what was your previous activity? And with that, some universities will ask you also to attach an affidavit to confirm what your previous activity was. So the rule from a university is that we want to know what was your most recent academic performance. If you have attended another university, we need to know that, because remember, our intake and our funding and our subsidy, our agreement with the Department of Higher Education and Training in terms of what our numbers for admission are linked to first-time entry students. And so if you are not honest, you are then lying not just to the university, but you are also lying to the Department of Higher Education and Training as well, because we then don't know that directly. And you are also then taking up the space of somebody else who legitimately should be in that position. If you are a NSFAS student, it has a whole lot of other implications because NSFAS will track you in this manner as well. And if we do find out you could lose funding, you could lose a lot more. Lying to the university is never ever a good step to trying to get into the university. If you have been admitted elsewhere, you have not performed well, let the university know, and also let them know perhaps what were the reasons for that or how you might make it a better success somewhere else. But don't ever leave out information, because as universities, we will find out eventually. And you will then put yourself in a very difficult situation where we might then ask you to leave the university and we may not ask you to return again. So it's always important that be upfront and honest with the university, because we will find out eventually. And you will then just put yourself in a very difficult position at that point in time, because while you might have failed at your previous institution, you could have continued studying there, but you then left them and you lied and came somewhere else, and now you will be left without a space at either of the universities. But when applying, the universities will always look at your most recent academic performance. So if you've taken a year off, we'll ask you to confirm what were you doing in that year, etc. If you were studying elsewhere, we'll ask you for those results so that we are fair to the current matriculants that are coming in. And we are also fair to other people who are applying, because fairness is a very important part of any selections process.
No, thank you for that. So basically, people should not try to be sneaky. And obviously, I think people will do this thinking that revealing their first year results will actually disadvantage them. But you are basically saying hiding that also on its own, it might be equivalent to fraudulent to the worst case scenario, where if it is found out, you have actually tricked us by not opening up about something that will have affected your admission. Okay, thank you for that. Now, in conclusion, I just have two questions that I want to just touch on before we conclude. One of them is with regard to, okay, let me start with this one. There are students, and it might not be common maybe at your institute, but somewhere, where they speak about our results are still going through an audit process. Can you just touch on that, just for any person, any student who's not familiar with what audit is? What does it imply? I thought when you write, the marks go to the exam, and then those marks are captured and they appear on our results. But it seems like there's some quality assurance process that happens in between that also has an implication on when the results can be made available, particularly for those who want to graduate, who want to apply for work. Just touch on that. What's the audit? Where does it play a role with regard to the availability of final results?
So when you write an examination, Teboho, in order to ensure that the marking has been fair, marks have been captured correctly, and the outcomes are correct, there must be a number of checks and balances that a university, a department, a faculty must do. And it starts from the time that the examination is set. So from the time the examination is set, you have internal moderation and you have external moderation. And that basically checks to make sure that the paper is correct, the level of the questioning is correct, the answers are also captured correctly, etc. The marking will also be done properly, and that the paper is of a quality that is acceptable to the university as well as to any external person that might be looking at it. So your audit, as you mentioned, it sort of starts from that point in time already, making sure that the paper is actually of a good quality and of a good standard in order to be administered to the student. Once the student writes the paper, it then, of course, then goes to the lecturer to be marked or to the examiner to be marked. And once they are done marking, it goes through that moderation process again. One, to make sure that the lecturer marked in a manner that was correct. They were not too harsh, they were not too lenient, they didn't leave out any questions, they marked in a manner that was not disadvantageous to the student, and that they marked in a manner where the integrity of the examination is still there. So that is sort of the next part. From there, the marks must, of course, then be captured. Once they are captured, they must then, of course, be checked to make sure that whoever was capturing the marks or how the marks were captured was the mark of that student or of that person. And from there, it is then shown to run through the system to basically see, does the student meet the requirements for this program or not? Because it might be that they have a final mark of 60%, which is a pass at the university, but there might be a rule that says you can only pass the module if your examination mark was 65% or your examination mark was above 55%. And that, of course, becomes sub-minimum rules, and that's a whole different discussion. But it is there to check that the marks are captured correctly and that the student passes or fails the module correctly based upon the rules. From there, the next check is basically that all of the modules that the student now has taken for the year, what they have passed, what they have failed, what is now going to be their outcome. Are they going to be promoted to the next year? Are they going to fail? Are they going to complete their degree? Are they going to be excluded? Whatever the case is. And so once again, all of those modules are checked for that student in that program for that year to see whether their outcome is going to be any one of those or more. And then from there, there's still another check, because in some cases you might have to go to a faculty committee to approve the marks or to approve a certain decision. You might have to go to a Senate committee. And so there's quite a process to get the marks out, so that when we tell you that you have a degree from a university, we are absolutely certain that the integrity of the examination based upon which you are getting this degree is complete, that there's no loopholes where something might have gone wrong, there's no errors, etc. And so we have quite a stringent process at universities for these results and for the final outcomes, because we need to ensure quality and we need to ensure integrity. I know students might think we sometimes take too long, but in order for us to be fair and to tell employers out there, to tell students as well that your degree is of a quality that is acceptable, it's a standard that is high, we make sure we go through all of those processes so that nobody is disadvantaged and that we have quality in everything that we do.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for that. And maybe in conclusion, obviously there are students who are not accepted. They will need to explore other options. I wanted to ask you if you can just break it down in terms of different institutes that they have. Now we speak about bachelor's acceptance, those who qualify to go to university, but the other options regarding universities of technology, colleges, and all that, or what we call FETs. Can you just maybe just give a brief explanation about the difference between the different kinds of institutes that we have, and how can the student at least take advantage of them in terms of their offering, so that one knows that even though you don't meet a bachelor's acceptance, you still have options, and those options are still credible career paths that you can take.
So in terms of the different types of universities, Teboho, what typically happens is that based upon the traditional, the comprehensive, and the universities of technology, we would all issue slightly different types of certificates, diplomas, and degrees. Your traditional universities will focus a lot on degrees offerings, and therefore you must have a bachelor's pass at NSC. Your comprehensive universities will have a mix of certificates, diplomas, degrees. Your universities of technology also similar. But even your traditional universities will offer certificates, they will offer diplomas as well, but very little of those. And so when you are applying to any university, whether it is a traditional university, a comprehensive university, it's always to look at the programs that are on offer and what are their requirements, because those requirements become quite important. And it's also important for learners when they are in grade 12, grade 11, is to be very honest with themselves about where they think their performance is going to be pitched at. Because you don't want to be applying for a program where you know you're not really going to meet the requirements and therefore waste your application, when you could have applied for a program where you know you are quite strong, you are quite competitive, and you will definitely get a space. So the difference between those three universities isn't too great. It's just that some might have more certificates and diplomas than others, and the program offerings might be slightly different. But the main thing for any learner or applicant to bear in mind is always look at what is the minimum admission criteria for that program. And then to look at your matric subjects, do you meet them? Look at the level of your performance. Are you meeting it? And also to be very honest about, is this something that I want to do? Is this something I would qualify for? So that you apply for a program that you know you have a better chance of getting into. The example I gave a bit earlier, Teboho, is that if you are applying for a BCom degree and BCom says you must have pure maths at a level 4, but you only have maths lit, you are never going to be accepted into BCom because you don't have the right subject. So don't apply for that. Rather apply for something where you do have the right subjects. And also, if you are looking at your bachelor's endorsement, etc., apply to universities knowing what your own level of achievement is. Don't apply based upon what your friends are doing, what your family wants you to do. Look at what your interest is, what your level of achievement is, and make smart decisions about your applications. That's always very important. Make a smart decision rather than a, how do we put it? A good looking one, because you want to tell people I applied for medicine, and so you apply for medicine, but it's not what you're interested in. It's not something that's actually important to you. So always apply for what makes you interested in studying and do it very, very smartly.
Basically, don't go with the peer pressure. I think
Yes.
go with what aligns to your abilities and interest as well. No, thank you so much. And maybe lastly, and if mainly basically for any learner who's out there planning to apply to the university, I've asked a lot of questions that you have touched on, but maybe any ways that you might want to share to any student planning to register, waiting for any communication from the university, or any student that is out there not knowing where to go. Are there any last words that you can maybe share with them in preparation for the next, we don't even have much time, the next week or two, so that they can at least wrap their mind around options and possibilities so that they know what to do? Or any advice that you can give anybody out there who just got the results and are exploring options?
The very first one, Teboho, is that if you have received an offer from the university, make sure you're checking your emails, make sure you're checking your SMSs. And then, of course, if you are accepting that offer, make sure you know what the registration information is. So go onto their website, look for their registration page, or they would have emailed you the information, and then make sure you follow those processes properly. Don't take advice from other people to say, no, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that. If the university's registration process says do it, because you might put yourself at risk. So for those who have received an offer, make sure you read your communications properly, and then of course follow the registration process as best you can. And if you have any problems, then to contact your faculty, contact your department, contact the university. They will always assist you in resolving those. For those, Teboho, that are awaiting a decision, we can only say be patient. Selections is a process, and the university will make a decision in due course. If you are not part of the first batch of offers, you might be part of the second or the third, but just to be patient and just check your statuses regularly, either on the university's portals or via their communications areas, etc. For those that have been declined, it's not the end of the world if you have been declined. University is only one avenue to have a success in life. It's not the only one, it's just one of them. And a decline this year doesn't mean you need to also give up on university applications forever. You can always go back, repeat matric subjects, perform better. During the year, take some time off to actually maybe think about what you want to do, take on some work, etc., that is linked to your particular career that you are interested in. But do not just waste the year by sitting at home and applying and waiting for the following year. Do things to sort of improve your marks, do things to improve your experience, whether it's work experience or otherwise, but do something that will make you stand out from other applicants as well. If you have also received a decline from a university, or if you have not applied and you suddenly received your marks and you now want to make an application, most universities do not accept late applications. They do not accept walk-in applications, but you can apply via the Central Applications Clearinghouse. Their website is cach.cas.ac.za, and you can apply via them for placement. So you can put in your late application there. If you have been declined by other universities, you can also be placed there. And universities across the country have access to this applications portal, where if they are struggling with numbers, or if they look that or if they feel they need applicants for a particular program, they do go onto this particular portal and then take applicants from there. So even though universities don't accept late applications directly, they don't accept walk-ins, you can apply via the Central Applications Clearinghouse. So even on Google, if you just type in CACH, or if you just type in Central Applications Clearinghouse, their website will appear, and we advise all persons who have either been declined or persons who have not applied already to go via that process, just so that you are covered in that sense. And that, Tebogo, would be my last advice for those that have not applied, but also for all the others.
Well, thank you so much. And I think what I will do, I'll just put that website link just below this video. But before I close, I think I'll commit sin if I don't ask this. They asked me a question: why do they have to pay application fee? If I'm going to register and pay registration fee, why does an application carry an application fee? And if I have applied and I'm being rejected, can I then come and request it so that I can apply somewhere?
So that would be a difficult one for me to answer, Tebogo, because UWC doesn't have an application fee.
Is it? Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
And several other universities also don't have application fees.
Okay.
So for a lot of students, it's also just to check up on universities. In a lot of cases, and this, of course, is also a word of advice to parents, parents who might have learners, children, etc., that might be going to university in the future, is that check the university website to see whether they are actually charging an application fee or not. There are a lot of con artists, there are a lot of swindlers which say, I will apply to the university on your behalf, and then they ask you for 200 Rand, 300 Rand as an application fee, whereas the university does not require any application fee. So just check up on which university you're applying to. Not all universities require an application fee, but for those where an application fee is required, unfortunately, it's not refundable. Because remember, when you are applying, the system, the administration, the services must still be carried by somebody. And so that money that you paid goes into ensuring that your application could go through the process. Whether it was successful or not doesn't mean you can get a refund on that. So that's a bit of a difficult one for me to answer, Tebogo. But in most cases, your application fee is not refundable if a university is charging you an application fee.
No, awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Matric G. Thank you for your time. And I think this interview comes at a very crucial time as students are actually preparing to go to the university, there are a lot of questions that they have, their parents and all that. And I think you have touched on the key questions that they will be asking. And I hope what you have touched on will bring some clarity on how they move forward and are able to maneuver their at least first month in getting their kids being admitted to the university. So thank you so much, and thank you for your time, and all the best with all the preparation in the first half of the year and for the rest of the year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Teboho. It was a pleasure.